Thank God. No? Now thank God. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that there's an escalation of relevance in this debate. Because the first proposition talked about the people who want to die. That's not what this debate is about. It's not about whether or not we accept euthanasia. The first opposition was a lot more relevant in that sense. The second proposition started talking about the collaborators. So what we're going to do on our side is talk only about the collaborators, because that's basically, since we're not keen on dictatorship, we're going to accept the legitimacy of the majority's moral views, and we're going to say that it might be okay that euthanasia is good or bad. All we're going to say is that these collaborators who help people leave the country should be exempt from the law. That's all we're going to say. And we're going to say that just as in the cases of pacifism, just as in the cases of minority rights in which we exempt people from doing stuff, that goes against their conscience, we're absolutely going to say that this is one of those cases. But first, let's take a look at some rebuttal. First of all, one point coming from first prop, because we think that this is very important, and I just have to, even though they're not relevant, on the whole point of free choice. The problem that you have is that, when tolerating assistance, you are denying the person who wants to die the free choice to do so. This is their whole rationale, right? Because there is no free choice. We say, what if it is a free choice? What if by the mechanisms set by the first opposition we can establish that it's a free choice? Then by your very principle, we must allow it. And so therefore your whole case falls on one flawed argument. Okay, on my... most of the rebuttal to the previous speaker will be incorporated into my speech, but on the point of social contract, we think that this is absolutely ridiculous, that you belong to the social contract even when you leave. Ladies and gentlemen, I have dual citizenship of the United States and of Israel. I've been living in Israel for the majority of my life. I don't think I should be paying taxes to the US government, especially not the US government. I think this whole argument is absolutely ridiculous. You do not belong to the social contract. You are not accountable for what happens there. You are not obligated to fulfill any of the civil duties that they fill. No. Going on to my first point of why there are harms to the assistant. We say that the assistant has a moral obligation to help the person who wants to die, right? But we say that the obligation is so strong that it should be respected above the moral views of the community. And this is obviously going to get into the whole point of conscience. Why is that so? Because we say that moral laws come into existence through voting. We all accept that. And we say that voting is expressing my moral opinion, but I'm willing to accept sometimes that the moral fabric of society will not reflect my own moral point of view, because I am in the moral minority. And this obviously is the only way in which a state can coexist. We say that, what we say is that at times the state is willing to exempt me from abiding by one of its moral laws, and euthanasia is absolutely a moral law, for no other reason than my abiding by that law is a deep affront against my conscience. And a good example for that is the exemption from serving in army service for a pacifist, or minority rights, circumcision, or whatever. Now, we say that this proposition is an affront against the conscience of that collaborator because it forces him to violate a principle in which he deeply believes. And that principle is the assistance to someone whose life is so miserable that they do not want to go on living. And we say that furthermore, many of these collaborators are family members of these people. And they have to suffer. They have to suffer seeing these people every single day, day in and day out, suffer completely to the bottom of their souls. And we say that this goes against who they are, what they believe in, and all their values in such a deep fashion that it violates their conscience. And why is this bad, ladies and gentlemen? First of all, because we say that my identity is immensely important to me, and denying me the ability to exercise my conscience and exercise choices reflecting my values may result in a loss of my identity, because I can look at myself in the mirror and say that I cannot help my mother commit suicide because her life is so miserable. Who am I anymore? I don't even know who I am. And we say that this kind of loss of identity is a severe harm to the individual. But moreover, I'll take you in a second, we say that there's no need for it, because we say that respecting the assistant's conscience does not necessarily make sufficient harms to the moral community. And we say that the moral community has no legitimate claim to say that, you cannot leave this country because it offends my views on euthanasia. We think that this kind of social cohesion is absolutely wrong. Go.
We say that if you want to commit suicide, this can be a rational choice. We say the British government cannot assure this is a free choice if your family is in Myanmar.
That has to do with choice. Choice of the individual is a different debate. This debate is about the assistant. We're willing to accept that there may be coercion. We're willing to accept that it may not be a completely free choice, but that's not what this debate is about, because we're accepting that there are mechanisms set in place in society through which we can establish whether or not this is a free choice. And so therefore we say that your whole rationale, your whole case, completely falls. So, going on to my second point of why inaction is action, because we realize that the proposition can come up and say, look, we're not forcing, the collaborator to actively do something, but we're actually just asking them to refrain from doing something, to refrain from sending, their relative abroad. To this we say that this is a misunderstanding of what respecting one's conscience is all about. Because we say that if you support a state through tax money, or through army service or whatever, you support in turn the policies which deeply contradict who you are. And we say that this is the essence of every civil society, because for all of us there are laws that we deeply disagree with, and yet we have to obey them. But we say that with some laws, this kind of affront runs too deep. This kind of affront is way too significant for the state and for society to ignore. And we absolutely think that this is one of those cases. Because what we say is that in some issues, we're not willing to make you stand by while your principles are violated. Certainly not if you support the violation of those principles through tax money that support policies in which violate those principles. And so we say that in this particular case, in cases like it, inaction is action. And so therefore, we say that the conscience of the individual, the collaborator, must be protected, and therefore we must give a moral exemption from the law in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, we brought you two basic ideas. First of all, before those ideas, we said that this debate is not about whether euthanasia is good or bad. We're willing to accept that, we're willing to leave this to the majority to decide. All we're saying is that you have no legitimate clause to prosecute people who assist their family members, their mothers, their dying fathers, to go abroad and commit euthanasia in other countries where it is legal. And the reason we're saying this is no other than then by this proposition, we get a deep affront against every principle which I hold dear. And we say that in these cases, there is absolutely a justification to protect these people from the arbitrary arm of the state. I call upon you to, of course.